everybody. Thank you all. I know it's relatively early in the morning on the last day of Collision, so I appreciate this. And I'm going to be talking with you about the human issues that drive your business behavior in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And to start, I just would like you to close your eyes, don't fall asleep, and imagine a world where you get to come into work every day at 10:30 in the morning, your dog in tow, where you get to have meals, or every meal is provided for you, and you love coming into work because your job is a calling, not a vocation. And you're unhindered by bureaucracy, so you get to move as fast in business as you'd like to drive your car. You can open your eyes, and congratulations. Sounds pretty terrific, right? Well, you're an entrepreneur. And as an investor in entrepreneurs, your life's probably not so different. You've hung up the sneakers and the hoodie, and you've hung up your gladiator tools to be a coach on the sideline, but you're still part of an incredible techno-utopian tribe that's changing the world. What I've just described are the human elements of being an investor or a founder that we should celebrate. But these human elements that make entrepreneurship so thrilling and have transformed our society with their imagination and sheer chutzpah have a dark side too. The human issues that drive your business behavior can limit your company's growth, cause a transactional relationship with your customers, cause bad decision-making, and has created an entrepreneurial ecosystem that is open only to a select few of the makers of tomorrow. So welcome, everyone. My name's Judy Wade, and I lead a practice within McKinsey called Fuel. And we serve founders from seed through IPO, as well as their investors. And the human issues that I'm about to describe to you is based on a study that we conducted with a firm called Lucid Research that specializes in defining the anthropological or sociology elements within tribes or ecosystems. And particularly in this ecosystem, as entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, we think we're rational human beings. We think first and foremost, we're thinking human beings, when in fact our emotional and social state heavily influences our decisions. Just ask me how rational I am at Friday at 5 p.m. when I can literally feel that weekend cocktail in my hand. I'm like, don't make me make a business decision right now, please. We also think that we make decisions in the present based on present information, when in fact we navigate the world based on our past familiarity with it. We also think our choices are informed by pragmatically weighing options. And often, even after we've pragmatically done that, we still act incredibly spontaneously. These are just some of the human elements and the examples of how that human self affects our business behavior. And as entrepreneurs, we already are operating in a much more difficult business environment than our corporate brethren. First and foremost, there is no Goldilocks data in this ecosystem, right? There's never enough, and there's never just the right amount of either data or benchmarks to guide our way. We also have a very strong belief that entrepreneurship cannot be taught. And therefore, we actually value training and business frameworks less than we probably should. And given we are creating something entirely new, we value execution over planning. I mean, who could have actually planned for Facebook, either when it started or actually what's happening with it now? So pivoting is a way of life for us, and the pivoting actually feels good, particularly for those 20 and 30-year-olds in this room who kind of act that way regardless. So the sum of all this is that those of you who are entrepreneurs or venture capitalists have to make high-stakes decisions under incredible uncertainty with much fewer facts and a need to move fast. And within this business context, these human issues can therefore actually have an even greater influence on us. Many of you will sort of acknowledge and understand the emotional and social states and how that affects your decision making. But they're just two of the human elements that drive this tribe. It's also how we worship, how we play, our physical surroundings, and what we appreciate visually or aesthetically. And these unique human elements are actually our strengths and our weaknesses as investors, founders and CEOs, and collectively as an entrepreneurial tribe. Now, there's really only one way to describe the emotional state of this ecosystem, and it's the pressure to crush it constantly. Not a unicorn, failure. Not a big exit out of your portfolio, failure. It's scary, especially if you're actually burning other people's cash, and particularly if you're burning your family and friends. But admitting it is scary is actually really hard, because at the end of the day, you entrepreneurs and venture capitalists are actually anti-authority risk takers. Honestly, many of you would really be unemployable by the man. And you're also incredibly overconfident risk takers. And it's these two oppositional dynamics, being actually overly confident, optimistic risk takers, and having to lead in these pressure cooker environments, that can create individual and organizational burnout and depression. And it can also lead to something called anchoring bias, where you jump to conclusions before you should. Now, socially, this is a very unique tribe. It is really a who you know is how you get funded economy. And it's a meritocracy if you're already part of the network. And if you have a broad network, you're going to go farther and faster. And that network operates kind of like a band of brothers. It's very closely knit, heavily reliant on reciprocity, and yes, it is gossipy and status conscious. And because the stakes are so high and there's so much uncertainty, it really creates this huge amount of trust within this band of brothers. You rely on your network, and by relying on this network, you can actually cause confirmation bias. You don't want to piss your network off. You have a very close circle, so you infer information from this tight network that supports or confirms your existing assumptions and beliefs. And you also reinforce the assumptions and beliefs of others, even when you shouldn't. Now, I don't know if any of you are fans of Silicon Valley, but if you are and you saw episode 3 this season, you might agree that this ecosystem is sort of anti-religious in the traditional sense. But most companies are founded on a religious principle or spiritual principle that I like to describe as today's work is tomorrow's world. Forget the house, forget the mortgage. Entrepreneurship is the new American dream. It's the way out for us and for our economy in this kind of global disruption. And all of you founded your companies with the missionary zeal. And being part of this tribe as a founder, CEO, or investor is a calling for all of you, not a vocation. And this idea of being part of something greater means that you're willing to make great sacrifices and take huge risks as a visionary change agent. And while most of you might not worship at a church, synagogue, or mosque, we all worship at the Church of Latter-day Exits. And this kind of cult-like obsession with founders, unicorn founders and funders, means that we're often willing to turn a blind eye to the negative consequences of our creations, as well as the bad behavior that those we worship may be exhibiting. We also may ignore the impact that this personal sacrifice has on ourselves and those around us. Now, we may worship at the Church of Latter-day Exits, but we also find time to play hard. Our work is our life, and our play is our company. And unlike in traditional corporations, in this ecosystem, the professional me is the personal me. It's all-encompassing. And there's almost this like gladiator feeling about the sort of hunt for success. And that can create these incredibly competitive cultures that can be really thrilling or frightening. And it can also reinforce overconfidence bias, where we rely on our own knowledge and opinions when making our decisions. Now, surprisingly, for an ecosystem that created our online communities, we prefer offline to online. For us, belonging is local, and to be close, you have to get close. That means being available to meet up socially, to actually plug in locally. And for a community that's building the future through technology, we sure like to get together a lot. At conferences, for meals, at networking events, meetups, and we love our private clubs. Well, this is great for those who live in Silicon Valley and Silicon Alley, but it's a huge disadvantage if you don't. And it's a very significant missed opportunity for investors who don't look outside their drivable distances for entrepreneurs. And it can also create bias as you think about scaling your companies, because you might be reluctant to open those next set of offices because they're not going to be near you in terms of physical proximity. In terms of aesthetics, for an ecosystem that prides itself on its sneakers and hoodies, our aesthetics, both place and people, affect if, how, and how long you will engage with me. That hoodie, the black turtleneck Steve Jobs wore, the ping pong table in the office, whether you might drive a Tesla or not, really affects our perception of the person or company and our decisions about them. Do you look like me? Are you smart? Are you successful? Are you part of my tribe? And if you're not, will I listen to you? Will I actually get advice from you? Will I hire you? Will I fund you? So these are the human issues: the social, emotional, religious or spiritual, play, physical, and visual elements of this ecosystem. And what this ecosystem has brought society, mobile phones, artificial intelligence, the cloud, e-commerce, new cures for cancer, is because of these human issues, not in spite of them. Your missionary zeal means that you and your teams are all in. You give and get 125%. You move fast and take risks because you actually are a visionary change agent. And the trust in the network speeds up hiring, getting advice, and funding. This ecosystem actually has its own banking system. Founders with big exits become GPs or angels, and then they fund the next-gen founders. And so the cycle of innovation continues within this tribe. But these human issues have a dark side too. They bias your decision-making as leaders, and they can negatively affect your cultures. Being part of a small, tight-knit network can result in availability bias, where we rely on what we've most experienced to make our decisions, even when that experience is not complete. And the pressure to crush it constantly, as I said, plus the lack of data, can cause this anchoring bias, where we're more likely to jump to conclusions before we should. The hubris and all-in religious aspects of this ecosystem can actually cause the overconfidence bias, where we rely on our own knowledge or those in our network. And how could you not have this bias? Because quite frankly, you probably wouldn't have started a company otherwise. And the money that stays in the hands of the few can both create and reinforce gambler's fallacy, where we believe that our past success has already determined our future success, blinding us to the need to adapt to different situations than we faced previously. The negative aspects of this human elements of this tribe have also resulted in systemic bias within companies and across this ecosystem. The scientific roots of this ecosystem has created a false sense of objectivity and meritocracy. Discrimination and bias are actually deeply culturally entrenched, and we don't even realize it because we started our companies or we're part of these companies because we have often a technology or a science background. And so we don't even realize that these sort of human elements are silently driving our judgments and our perceptions. Do you look like me? Do you play like me? Have you had a big exit either like me or so I can fund you? Often, talent takes a backseat to connections just because we trust our connections so much. And these human elements together have created a glorification of youth and an almost impossible barrier for those who are outside these social or geographically closed networks. So what can we do about it? First, a healthy dose of wisdom and awareness will make you a much better startup founder, CEO, or investors. Acknowledge these human issues and their impact on you, your employees, and your culture. Ask questions as to whether you're incorporating new ideas, new facts, and new people into your decision-making as you grow. And also ask whether, for example, you should have this continued all-in commitment as your company grows, because you will have employees who need to go home and take care of their kids. And as an investor, be careful not to disqualify potential entrepreneurs who ask for a real salary. They might have student debt to pay or a family at home to take care of. And importantly, recognize that your customers don't make solely rational or economic decisions either. They make human decisions. And if you can engage them on these human elements, which Apple has done superbly, by the way, you will be able to move beyond a transactional or trust-based relationship with them. And finally, I hope we can collectively address the bias in this ecosystem so that all the makers of tomorrow can be part of this remarkable tribe. Thank you.